Welcome to the ROI Masterclass, the podcast where vision meets strategy and bold moves create measurable results. I'm Liat Siegel, interior designer and ROI strategist with 17 years of experience. I help businesses transform properties and ideas into high-performing assets. This show is specifically for real estate investors, hospitality operators, and boutique developers who aren't afraid to take risks, challenge the status quo, and demand a return on every decision they make. Each and every week, we talk with innovators and leaders across industries about the strategies and the insights and really all the unconventional thinking that turns potential into profit every single time. If you believe that smart design, decisive leadership, and strategic risk are the keys to real ROI, you're in the exact right place. Let's dive in. Today on the ROI Masterclass, we are joined by Wendy Ruiz Cofiño, Executive Vice President at Falke, a premier owner's representation and project management firm specializing in complex commercial, hospitality, industrial, and HOA condominium projects across Florida. With more than 2 decades of leadership in business development, technology, and operations, Wendy bridges strategy with execution, aligning design intent, budgets, and construction realities to protect the owner's investment and ensure measurable results. Her work centers on true drivers of ROI in construction, risk management, cost control, schedule integrity, and stakeholder alignment. Known for her transformative leadership and precision management, Wendy emphasizes the power of connection and collaboration among all project players, ensuring every decision from concept through completion advances long-term value, transparency, and efficiency. That is quite the introduction for you, Wendy. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Thanks a lot for that introduction. It really makes me feel better at this point, like such the perfect words. How did I get here? Basically, my background is in technology, and I would like to say that it's very similar what I did my entire life. Like it's like the software development element to the, of course, the real estate development that we see nowadays. What I do is to really apply the knowledge that I've gained all over these years into what I'm doing today. I get here as an immigrant. I'm from Guatemala originally, and 10 years ago, I moved to the US, initially to San Francisco, and then since 2015 I'm living in Miami, and it's where these adventures started, where I really started changing my career towards this new real estate element for me. And little by little I understood what needed to be done, and really like what has me here today is the implementation of these processes that can be as well used in real estate that I have from my background in technology.
I love that you're using technology and integrating it into real estate today, and also how you described that it's an adventure, especially as an immigrant coming to the United States and paving a path for yourself. And in that adventure, I'd love to understand how being an owner's rep has really evolved for you, and why is it so critical to the ROI of a project?
Talking about the ROI of a project, the owner's representation and project management is an element that is really, I think, fundamental, not only for investors or people that is in business, that of course what they know is their business and they need to focus on that. And at the same time, when you're building the infrastructure in order for your business to thrive, of course you're not going to know everything, especially like we have so many clients that come from out of the state and out of the country that really don't know all the process here. Like it is not the same to build here in Florida than in the rest of the world. So basically what we do is not only help with the, of course, all the costs, the scheduling, all the life cycle of cost savings, or like how we really manage all the vendors or the process of permitting, like from idea to delivery. We take care of all these elements that are really not only knowing about the process, but also knowing the right connections and the right people to talk to and who's going to be needed, because every single project has its very specific needs. And this process of really getting to life something, an idea and a project and infrastructure, like what we need is to have all of these together, knowing how to manage it and really be on top of everything so it happens the way it needs to happen, from idea to completion, as I said. And that's exactly what we do.
I think so many people, when they ask me to design a space, they're like, can't you just design it in like an hour? It's easy, right?
Yeah.
That's like the number one misconception. Oh, it comes to, yes, I dream about design and I can design. I literally design in my sleep and wake up and say, wow, I really loved that design. I'm so jealous of that designer. And then I'm like, wait, that was my dream. dream. But even though this comes naturally to you or to somebody like myself, I think that most people, they don't necessarily understand how much goes in. You listed off a whole bunch of aspects of what goes into the project management, and many people think that they can do it themselves. What's one of the top misconceptions that you would think owners have about completing a project? And where do you come in and help them solve that issue that they really can't handle on their own?
Well, it is not that they cannot handle it. I've seen people that is like super prepared to take on all these things, like, but basically it's time management and knowing how to put together all these vendors or like the coordination effort is really important. And sometimes when you don't do this for a living, maybe some things that you're going to oversee that are important to take into account. If you want to have a project that is on time, on target, let's say on target in terms of what you expected to cost, to look like, to what's your experience, what's the life that you're going to be having there for your business or for yourself, all of those elements play a role. And also what happens here is that sometimes people is also vested into these projects, like, and they are not objective at the moment of taking decisions or making decisions or like really comparing vendors, like simply the fact of procuring for a project, because you see it every day for sure in your design business, that it gets to the point where you need to be a little bit objective and have the ability to just bring the vendors to the table, negotiate with them. And those are things that if you're like really vested in this project or you like really don't have this objectivity, you can be like making some mistakes that can cost to the project, and then of course the most important part is to hold everybody accountable and agree on a schedule that we're all going to work with and that we're going to comply with. So there are many elements that it is not that you cannot do it as manage your project, but it is better to have someone that it's really taking care of every single part of it, thinking of the things that you are not like for sure an expert of thinking, and bringing the talent also, because like most of the time people that come with a project and with a brilliant idea or a brilliant infrastructure that they want to build, they don't precisely know all the, let's say, the best architect for your project or the best GC. Like there's so many things that are like the ideal designer, like because people kind of like have specializations, like they are good. Like for example, if you're in a restaurant business, there are certain general contractors that are like that's all they do, and the experience that they have just with the kitchen element or like really going over so many projects that they have built before, and they bring not only the good talent but also the experience, connections. We need something that is very urgent. Yeah, maybe that's going to be easier with them. Like all these elements are super important.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some challenges that you have when bringing the team together to make sure that things are done on time, on budget? And how do you mitigate those issues without blowing up and anyone feeling upset or blowing up the project?
Well, we're not going to say that the projects are not gone by without, like, at the moment someone gets upset or someone gets delayed, like life happens and we are just only human beings. What I usually do and I like to do is like, if we're talking about a budget, of course we have a contingency. We need to think about certain realistic numbers or realistic things that can happen. This is also about being a little bit informed about what is happening with the world, because just talking about tariffs, what do? We need to just think that and inform that this is happening. Maybe we don't know the impact that we're going to have at a certain point, like in this and in these. I'm like, you for sure a lot about these, like how do we really plan on a budget that is going to be an X amount of dollars and be 100% certain? That is impossible. So what we need is to just be really open and have these conversations and inform the client. One of the things that I've seen a lot is that the people come here with an idea of a certain amount of money that they want to spend on a project, and usually we have like an average. We already know like all these projects that we're managing, we know like per square footage how much it's going to be, and sometimes it is kind of like that is going to be the amount of money that you're going to need, or a little bit more. And sometimes what we have is a problem that the budgets are not realistic for the ideas that we're like, okay, this is the level of design and finishes that you want. The ballpark is like around here, and sometimes it's a hard conversation because people think that they can do it for less, or like it is not a realistic conversation until you put the numbers in front of them. But then everything is okay. Then you have a realistic budget and you get to work with it.
Expectations is literally everything, isn't it? Right? Setting that, even if it's going to go over budget, having that conversation from the get-go, even if they don't like it and it doesn't sit well, this is what you're not going to sugarcoat. This is what it's going to be. And this is what we have to expect. We're going to have contingencies in place. We're going to plan. We're going to track with what we do in terms of design. We track with the budget and have value engineering happening at the same time as the planning so that we're not getting to the end and saying, oh, we have to value engineer everything. It's happening in real time with backup options so that we can save time and money that way as well.
That is super important. And that is, I think that's the backbone of a good project. Like, absolutely. Having this information is crucial. You can have a beautiful design. You can have the best construction team. Everything can be perfect. But if you don't have your finances aligned and all this kind of tracking for everything that you're doing, I think that you're in trouble.
Absolutely. And I agree with you that on what you said, that an owner can design or they can manage the project on their own. But ultimately, they would be in the position of potentially leaving hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on the table if it's not done correctly, or if something is not planned, if something is not overseen properly, and the coordination of professionals. We call it in the design world, like, don't buy the puppy. Don't get attached to the vision, to the outcome. Yes, you have to have a vision. It has to be a driver. You can't buy the cute puppy because ultimately it's a numbers game. The data, the market that drives what the product should be at the end, not our emotions and our feelings and, oh, I just want it to look beautiful or be the idea. I saw this beautiful project over here. It's got to apply in the same way over here in this project. So ultimately, we want to make sure that our plans are strategic, our team is strategic, that we have the key players at the table that will be strategic and take the emotion really out of it.
Out of it, yes. And there is where we really play an important role because, like something you said before, like just things are, they are what they are. Like there's no sugar coating it, as you say. Like sometimes during the process, it is not just about, let's go back to the procurement. It is what it is. And maybe you are going to be hit by tariffs. Maybe something is happening. Maybe some of your materials are going to take longer coming from a place that you are like really like making a savings. So you balance everything. And then you have the landlord, if it's the building or if it's something like situations can come, you know, that you are not prepared for. And for me, one of the best things that I think that I can do for a project and for the owners, it's to just like not sugarcoat in it. Like it's very black and white because I know you are very attached to your project. You're paying rent sometimes. You have a business plan, business case. You have investors. You have people to respond to. And all of these really like it is very important for you. But if we are encountering a problem, for me, I don't want to really drown in the problem. We need to find the options. What are the next steps that we need to take? Like really not to lose control and to not lose sleep and to just know that your project is going to be, of course, happening in the best way possible and fastest way possible. But I think that bringing this element of the black and white and things as they are is very important because you can get lost sometimes when you are like super invested in a project.
And you've bought the puppy.
Exactly.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, the data doesn't lie. That black and white numbers that you were talking about, and it is what it is. This is the nature of the beast of construction, of design, of the real estate world. It's not always what we want it to be. It's a moving piece that's organically growing and changing, shifting at all times. And with that change and shift, there's so much happening in the market right now in terms of innovation and technology. And with your background, how do you bring that in to making projects more efficient?
You know, it is not so much about the technology. For me, the process is more important, you know, like thinking about how we make it happen, because there are many tools nowadays that can help us, or with AI and things happening that are super exciting, that makes things like easier, of course, faster. But if you don't have the building blocks of it, like what do you want? How am I making my client's life easier? Is this information that I'm providing really relevant? Or like, how do I present it in a way that they don't have to go through several reports to find what they need? Like for me, it's about that, you know, like really making it the easiest way possible for them to visualize, understand, and process. That's it.
Systems are literally everything.
Everything. Because you can have the strongest tool, like whatever, you know, like you can invest millions of dollars literally in technology. But if you don't have the right processes and the people is not onboarded and like you don't have a standardized way of presenting and using, I think you're leaving money that it's not being used wisely.
So what are some like operational inefficiencies that end up costing owners tens of thousands thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars that they leave on the table.
Like at the end is time. That's it. When you don't have the right response from your vendors, from your team, there is where you're leaving money. And then that, of course, everybody knows that, because as we discussed before, either you're paying rent or you need to start your business. You need to start like really like producing. Everything in the end is how you manage your time. I think like independently on what platforms you're using, or if you're like design processes like this and that, like you really need to be aware. And that's why I really like to take on projects at the very beginning, like because we have clients that come at different stages of the life of the project. The ones that we can help the most are the ones that come before you in design, because of course you can set realistic expectations, like, and it's not going to be like what you just mentioned at the beginning of our conversation where like, okay, I need this design for tomorrow. Of course, I know now that that's not possible. We need to be realistic. We want something that is going to work and that is going to, like be able to be coordinated and put in place together with the rest of the vendors. I don't want something that is for tomorrow. I need something that is good and that it's going to work. And for that, we need a compromise and we need to work as a team. All these things are super important, and is where you leave the money, or like, of course, the lack of sometimes systems to track your spending, or where you save money also, because sometimes, of course, the projects need a lot of information to make decisions. And who's tracking that? Where can you visualize that? So that is also important. Time, of course, and the actual money that you're spending and how you're tracking it. I think it's very important.
So important. I'm going to butcher this saying. I think it's from Abraham Lincoln. Don't quote me on it, but he said something about if he had to cut down a tree, he would sharpen his axe for 4 or 5 hours. If he had 6 hours, he would take 4 or 5 hours to sharpen his axe to prepare, right? That's the process.
I've heard that, yes.
Yeah.
And it's completely true. There's where you can add a lot of value when you put together the team, coordinate, you're like really being realistic about things, and coming back again to the expectations and not create expectations that are not going to be met.
Yes, exactly. When somebody will come to me mid-construction, it's very rare for me to take that project on because they're already running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And you literally need to stop everything, pause, take a pause. Everybody needs to take a time out, and you need to reevaluate and assess the situation to make sure that the plan that's in place is solid. Because oftentimes in mid-construction, things need to get done right now. And the decisions that are going to be made end up costing a lot more because things done in haste repent in leisure.
You know what? You're really making me think about something that is so important, and that it's related to the design process, of course. And it's when the owner of a project, when the construction, you're like in the middle of everything is happening, and all of a sudden, of course, something happens, and maybe for their business model or whatever they need to get out of these specific infrastructure, they need to make a change. And these changes usually really like they don't understand what it entails in terms of time, money, redesign, architects, all of this investment that comes with a change in the project. And also, like you were saying, if you get involved in the middle of a project, it's like it is a major undertaking. It's really time consuming. It is, I think, a double the effort of like really designing it from the scratch, because you have to kind of like put yourself in this already happening project, and the effort is enormous.
I would venture to say you have to charge a lot more. It's a lot more complicated. Just like building from ground up is a lot easier than doing a renovation because there's already things in place. You have to work with the constraints of what's in the space already. And whereas ground up, it's from scratch. And so coming in, having the team from scratch at the beginning, everybody working together in unison versus coming in the middle of the project and having to figure out and not step on any toes, it's a lot more complicated and time consuming.
Yes. Saying that when you're from the ground up is like some other elements that are so time consuming at the beginning of the project. Of course, all the permits, all the requirements that you need to have filled before starting your ground up. It is just a tree relocation. It can take forever. That's why I say when we get at the beginning of a project, we can take a look at everything and read in and set realistic expectations.
When you do work at the beginning of a project, what is your ideal, your dream setup if you could have it your way, and who would be on the team?
The dream setup is to have someone that comes with the idea and maybe started talking to a realtor about where the location location is it going to be, and go with these clients through the process, even selecting what's going to work better for this kind of business, office, venue, whatever it is that you're building, and start making those decisions together and putting together also the team. The team, of course, at the very beginning, depending on what it is, but let's say that it's going to be the main ones are the designer, the architect, the general contractor, that usually, if the project permits, having a pre-construction team is amazing, because the coordination, it's going to be helping the process instead of just having, okay, I have my design and I have my permit set. Let's say that we are at this point of having a permit set, and there is where you start looking for a general contractor. The general contractor had no say in trying to really cooperate with this process. And sometimes when you have a general contractor that also it's involved in the pre-construction phase, you can think about so many things that can be reflected in savings at the same time. That it's like, for me, that would be my ideal situation, to have this happening in these kind of like steps, that it helps a lot.
Yes, that is my ideal as well. I'd love to bring on a contractor from the get-go, because designers and architects are not contractors, and contractors are not designers and architects. So everybody has their expertise and what they're best at. And when you have the team in place from a strategic standpoint at the get-go of a project, you can save so much time, because then the design team is not coming up with plans that are not feasible or that are costly to implement.
No, and also you can start when the designer starts thinking and showing kind of like, these are the materials that we're planning, this is how it's going to look. That you can start from that phase, like, okay, trying to source, trying to look at what's the best option for you. Really, like when you're like, okay, now we need construction, and start rushing all this into, okay, now we're in a hurry and we need these by
Tomorrow.
2 weeks from now. Let's not say tomorrow, but like even like 2 weeks to really budget on a project. Like, it's too little time, I think. If you want quality, if you want the right vendors, the right negotiations, time, it's also important.
Yeah, and it also limits you in terms of what's available, right? There are really beautiful pieces or materials from vendors that take a little longer.
Yes.
And when you're limited in terms of time, you have a lot less to choose from, and therefore it really affects the overall outcome of the project. So having that pre-plan, having that strategic team in place from very early on, I think is, like you said, is number one.
It's number one. That, as we said, is like the ideal. You have that, and I think that your project runs smoother, and in the end, you have better results.
Do most of your projects start that way, or how do they mostly start?
You know that we have a variety of stages that we have started with clients. We have people that comes like in an emergency mode, like, oh my God, this is not moving. What do? I need help. Urgency, like emergency. So, okay, we have that. And of course, we evaluate what's the situation before saying we can take this on or not. We have some where luckily, we have been able to do these, have the appropriate teams even like suggest, like, what is going to be this project about? Okay, this is the list of architects, designers, GCs, and we evaluate all, and we proceed. So that's amazing. But we have also projects that start also that when we have the designer, and because many projects start with a designer, not even with an architect. The designer is like the working in the project, right? And then we onboard the rest of the team members. And the other one that we see a lot is that we already have drawings. Here are the drawings. This is a project. Okay, what's next? It's the construction phase.
Do you feel like there are any kind of technology that can help bridge the communication gaps between the different trades and professionals on the team? I find oftentimes, like we mentioned before the show, that the real estate and construction design world is very antiquated. How can we streamline that collaboration to make it easier on everyone?
Well, that a very common platform that people is using nowadays is Procore. Everybody's onboarded in the same platform, and you can, of course, ask questions, RFIs, and the appropriate person in the team is going to respond. And it kind of like really mitigates the problem of communication. You have your centralized documents, everything. It's like they're really on time to see, and all the relevant documents that you need for the project are going to be stored there. So it's a centralized platform for communication and documentation, and also to see the progress of the project. Like, it's a little bit of everything. And the thing is that not everybody uses it. Like in general, like if everybody would use it, like really like 100% of my projects has like this kind of tool. But if you don't have that, it becomes really complicated, like something like that. Just mentioning this one in particular because it's very widely adopted.
Yes, adoption is a really huge issue. I think that a lot of people don't necessarily take on those technologies, and therefore it becomes a lot more difficult when communication is fragmented, let's say in emails and WhatsApp or text messages and, all over the place, rather than being in one centralized location where all the documents live and the communications live. Like for us, we use Slack for both our
Yeah.
team and for our clients so that we can communicate and voice notes and all of that, videos and all that kind of stuff.
That is amazing because everybody finds their own platform that works for them, right? But on top of that, that even with the platforms that are so super robust that we of course use for the project, we also, because that is more from the general contractor side, like they are the ones managing all this information and all these platforms. But we as owners rep, we have our own proprietary kind of like system that we put in place. Like that is where we centralize everything. Because sometimes if you're talking about permits or if you're talking about some other elements that are happening outside of the platform, the proper, like where the architect, designer, general contractor, all these other trades are really like exchanging information. There are certain other elements or situations that are happening in the project that maybe are not going to be there. We as owners rep, we keep a log of everything. So in the end, you have a one single place where everything that's going on in the project, you can just really have it at your fingertips.
I love that. It's so important. In terms of a challenge or maybe a project that you've had in the past, has there been anything that stands out for you that has really changed the way that you operate and show up in your business today?
I'd say a learning curve every day. I'm telling you, it's one of the things that I love about my job is that I learn every day. I wouldn't say like, oh my God, this really was something that changed the way that I think. No, it's every day. Every day something happens. There's something to improve. There's something to learn. Even, the most impact for me is really investing time in getting to know vendors. Like that's something that even if it is not directly, like, that you wouldn't think that it's directly related to my owner's representation project management role, it is for me because I want to be able to have a database of really professionals that I know personally, that I know what they're working on, that maybe even I go and check the projects and see really what they're doing and understand where their abilities and their strengths are. So at the moment that I have someone that is with a specific requirement, I really have the knowledge. And that's something that I think it's an added value for my clients as well. So yeah, in a nutshell, it's like every day, implementing and improving in what you do.
I love that so much because we're also creating an ROI advisory board of professionals and vendors, of people that we can call upon for our projects to say, okay, how can we optimize ROI here or there within the project? And it's the same is true, or have architects or other contractors on the team that you can be able to call upon should you need for consultation or for actual implementation of the project.
Yeah, for me, that's super important. At the same time, I'm super grateful that I like to do it. So
you have to love it because construction, design, architecture, it's a very tough industry and you have to always be on your feet and ready for things to go sideways.
Well, if I may say something about that, I mentioned that I come from technology background and I loved it, really loved when you see something that was completed, that it's working, that is like magic, right? But then when I moved and I pivoted to this real estate kind of like new venture, and it's even more amazing, like I really love what I do. I love to see finished projects. It's unbelievable to see a tangible result of what you worked on. Really, I don't think there's something that is really like brings me satisfaction is to see something that is completed and thriving.
It's very satisfying, especially knowing how much went into the preparation, the details, the coordination. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, and see something, like it's there, it's real, and it's tangible.
Can you leave our audience with what you see as happening next in the industry? What's the next biggest thing or trend?
Of course, we're going to see a lot of things happening in general with artificial intelligence and technology. That's something that it's always going to be evolving nonstop. So I cannot even tell you what's going to be the next big thing because I don't think I even have the imagination to visualize it. It is because what's happening just today, it's big, the improvement not only in processes, really small things that make such a difference, like even like maybe in your line of business, you see that renders, what's the difference between like 5 years ago compared to today? Is it like really life-changing? And it's so amazing, the results. And you can provide so much like in-depth experience, and just the render, unbelievable. So just there, one example. But what I see also, and what I'm looking so much forward to see, is innovation in the way that we use our spaces, innovation in the way that people experience life, business, leisure in the spaces that we create. How we get also super innovative in the way that we're using materials in favor of our environment, and all these things that the young people and everybody, like that is innovating, it's going to bring to the table. Also, one last thing is really how we're like cases like it's in Asia that I've seen how the older population is getting mixed with younger population, or the use of co-living spaces where you focus more on what's the experience that you're giving to the people. And of course, there's always a business component related to it, but you're changing lives. And that is what the independent of technology, independent of all these things that are coming because it's a given. What I really, really, really look forward is to see all these changes in the way that we live, the way that we communicate, connect, and really thrive as human beings.
I love it. Experiential design, architecture, and use of spaces is really important. And I think that you're right. I think that that's up and coming because people care very much. They're looking for more of the experiential, emotional side of living life and enjoying. So I look forward to seeing that as well, and seeing how designers and change makers start using spaces in a very innovative way. Thank you so much for joining us, Wendy. I am so happy to have you on the show. If our audience wants to reach out to you, how can they do so?
We have our website is www.falkecorp.com, and there's where you can find us.
Amazing. We'll put your information in the show notes. Thank you again for joining us. Can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much for the invite.